He's so obsessed he'd never leave me. My wife whispered this to her lover, while I recorded everything from the next room. She even laughed in my face and said every girl cheats eventually, you just weren't fun enough to stay faithful. I didn't scream or fight, just stayed silent for 5 weeks, collecting 214 texts and a hidden Instagram archive. The moment she thought she had me cornered, I handed her a single link that turned her entire world upside down in seconds. My name is Reed. I'm 31. I work in logistics management, the kind of job where you spend most of your day making sure other people's problems get solved on time. I'm methodical. I don't like loose ends. I make lists. I double-check things. Marissa used to say that was one of the things she loved about me in the beginning. Later, she used it as evidence that something was wrong with me. We met 3 years ago through a mutual friend at a backyard cookout. She was funny and loud in a good way, the kind of person who made every room feel like it had more oxygen in it. We dated for 8 months, got engaged, got married 14 months after that. I was happy. I genuinely was. I want to be clear about that because what comes next is easier to understand if you know I didn't walk into this marriage with my guard up. I walked in completely open. The first time I noticed something was off, we'd been married maybe 4 months. She came home at 2 in the morning from a girls' night. I wasn't angry. I just asked if everything was okay, because she hadn't texted and I'd been half asleep on the couch waiting. She looked at me with this expression, not guilt, not apologetic, just tired of me, like the question itself was an imposition. I was out with my friends, Reed. I'm not required to check in with you every hour. I said okay. I dropped it. 6 weeks later, a photo surfaced on her Instagram. A group shot from someone's birthday dinner. Marissa was sitting on the armrest of a chair that a guy was sitting in, his arm around her waist, both of them laughing. I recognized him. Her old college friend. She'd mentioned him a few times, always casually, always in a way that made it feel strange to bring up again. I didn't say anything for 2 days. When I finally did, I kept it calm. I said the photo made me uncomfortable and I'd appreciate it if she was more mindful about that kind of thing going forward. She put her fork down, looked across the table at me like I'd just said something genuinely stupid. Every girl takes photos like that. It doesn't mean anything. You need to stop policing how I exist in public. I didn't push it. I told myself she had a point. I told myself I was being insecure. I told myself a lot of things over the next 2 years, and every single one of them kept me exactly where she needed me to be. That's what I know now. Back then, I just thought I needed to trust her more. The party was on a Saturday night in October. I didn't go. I had a shift the next morning, early start, 6 a.m., the kind you can't move around, and Marissa knew that when she made plans. She kissed me on the cheek on her way out, told me not to wait up, and said she'd be home before 1. I fell asleep on the couch around 11 with the TV on low. Woke up at 12:48. The apartment was quiet. I checked my phone, no messages, no missed calls. I told myself she was probably in an Uber. I told myself traffic was bad. I went to the bedroom, set an alarm, and laid down with my eyes open. 1 o'clock came and went. At 1:40 I sent a single text. Just, "Hey, you close?" No response. At 2:15 I called once. It rang out. I put the phone on the nightstand and stared at the ceiling and did the thing I'd gotten very good at by then. I talked myself down. "She's fine. You're doing it again. You're being that guy. Go to sleep." I didn't sleep. At 3:07 a.m., my phone lit up. Not a call, not a text. A video. 12 seconds. No message attached to it. No name, just a number I didn't recognize with a local area code. I pressed play. The room in the clip was loud and dark. The way house parties always look on someone's phone camera, everything too warm, too close, slightly out of focus. But I didn't need it to be in focus. I could see her. Marissa, in the green dress she'd bought 2 weeks earlier, the one she'd shown me when it arrived and asked if I liked it. She was dancing with a man whose face I recognized before I even fully processed what I was watching. Logan. The same Logan she'd described to me as just a college friend. The same Logan she'd told me, specifically, I was being paranoid about. She had her back to him, and he had both hands on her hips, and it wasn't the kind of dancing you do with someone you're just friends with. The clip ended. 12 seconds. I sat on the edge of the bed. I didn't call her. Didn't text. Didn't throw anything or pace the room or do any of the things a man is supposed to do in that moment in the movies. I just sat there, very still, and waited. 14 more clips arrived by morning. I watched every single one. She came home at 6:03 the morning. I heard the key in the lock. I was still sitting in the same spot edge of the bed, phone in my hand, 15 clips now saved to a folder I'd made sometime around 4 a.m. I hadn't moved much. I'd just been thinking. Marissa came through the bedroom door still in the green dress, heels in one hand, and the first thing she did when she saw me sitting there was go on offense. "Why is your phone off?" she said. Not "I'm sorry I'm late." Not "Are you okay?" Just that accusatory, like I owed her an explanation for the thing she was about to do to me. "I turned it off," I said. "I was trying to reach you. I had to get a ride with Donna because the Uber prices were insane and I didn't have." "I know where you were," I said. She stopped. Something moved across her face, fast, and then it was gone. She set her heels down on the floor slowly. "What does that mean?" I turned my phone around and pressed play on the first clip. Held it up so she could see. She watched it. All 12 seconds. Then she looked at me, and I want you to understand she did not look panicked. She did not look ashamed. She tilted her head slightly and let out a short breath through her nose, like a teacher who's disappointed in a student for asking a dumb question. "That's dancing, Reed." "Okay," I said. We were all dancing. That's what people do at parties. You would know that if you ever actually came with me instead of sitting home being, "There are 14 more," I said. She went quiet for a second. Then, "So you're going through my things now? Who sent you those? Was it Donna?" "I swear to God. I don't know who sent them. I didn't ask." She pivoted fast. Version 2 arrived without warning. Suddenly, she was the one who'd been wronged. I'd never trusted her, never gave her room to breathe, monitored her every move, made her feel like a prisoner in her own marriage. Her voice rose. She said if I wanted a divorce, I could have one. She said she was exhausted. She said she'd been exhausted for a long time. I didn't respond to any of it. I just looked at her. That seemed to make it worse. She took a step toward me, and her voice dropped to something quieter and much more deliberate. "You want to know the truth? Fine. Every girl cheats eventually, Reed. Every single one. You just weren't fun enough to make me want to stay faithful." The room went silent. She held my gaze for another second like she was waiting to see if that landed, like she wanted to watch it hit, and then she walked past me, pulled back the covers, and got into bed. Within 10 minutes, she was asleep. I sat back down on the edge of the mattress with 14 clips, still on my phone, and a sentence I already knew I'd never unhear. That was the moment I stopped thinking about saving the marriage. I started thinking about something else entirely. I didn't confront her the next day, or the day after that, or the day after that. I know what most people would have done. Sit her down, demand answers, have the conversation. I'd spent 2 years having versions of that conversation, and every single time, I walked away feeling like the problem. She had a way of taking whatever I brought to the table and flipping it by the end. I was always the one apologizing. I wasn't doing that again. So I made a different choice. I called it radio silence. Not because I had nothing to say, because I had everything to prove and I needed to prove it in a language she couldn't reframe. The first week, I acted normal. Cooked dinner when it was my turn. Asked how her day went. Slept on my side of the bed. She seemed relieved by that, like she'd expected a fight and was glad it hadn't come. She even laughed at something I said on Wednesday night, and for a second the whole apartment felt almost ordinary. I let her have that. I used the second week to get organized. I had 15 video clips backed up across 2 devices and a cloud folder she didn't have access to. I started labeling them by timestamp. The earliest was 11:14 p.m. The last one was 2:53 a.m. A separate clip, shorter than the others, that I hadn't been able to watch more than once. I watched it 4 times that week. I needed to be sure about what I was seeing. I was sure. The third week is when I set up the recorder. She'd mentioned another girls' night, same group, different house. I had a small handheld recorder I'd bought years ago for work meetings. Before I left for my shift that evening, I set it on the bookshelf in the living room, behind a row of paperbacks, facing the couch. I turned off every light in the apartment. Then I went to work. I came home to 37 minutes of audio. She'd had someone on speakerphone, I don't know who. But for 37 minutes, in my living room, in the dark, Marissa talked. She talked about Logan. She talked about that night. She laughed about certain parts. And at one point, in a tone that was almost fond, she said, "He's so obsessed he'd never actually leave me. He doesn't have it in him." I sat in my car in the parking garage and listened to the whole thing twice before I went upstairs. The fourth week, I found the Instagram stories. She'd made a second account, nothing elaborate, Just a username I didn't recognize until I saw a mutual friend react to one of the posts. I pulled up the profile. 12 stories over 3 weeks. Photos from nights out I hadn't known about. Captions like "single life hits different" and "finally free" posted on evenings when she'd told me she was tired and going to bed early. In every photo she was smiling. In most of them, she was still wearing her wedding ring. By the end of week 4, I had 15 video clips, 37 minutes of audio, a full archive of the Instagram stories, and a folder of screenshots I hadn't even looked through completely yet. I had everything I needed. And I felt almost nothing, which, after 2 years of feeling too much, was the closest thing to peace I'd had in a long time. Somewhere in the 5th week, Marissa figured out that something had changed. I don't know exactly when it clicked for her. Maybe it was the way I'd stopped pushing back during arguments. Maybe it was the way I'd started sleeping through the night while she stayed up late on her phone. Whatever it was, she felt the shift, and instead of sitting with it, she started pulling every lever she had. The text started on a Tuesday night while I was on a late shift. First one came in at 2:11 a.m. "We need to talk, read, I mean it." I read it on my break and put the phone back in my pocket. By 2:40 there were 4 more. By 3:15 the tone had changed. "You're shutting me out, and it's not fair. I made one mistake, and you're acting like I'm dead to you." There it was. Just one mistake. Like the other 14 clips were decoration. Like 37 minutes of audio in my own living room was something I'd imagined. By 4 a.m., the register had shifted again. "If you don't talk to me, I'm going to tell your family you've been emotionally abusing me for months. I have screenshots. I have proof. See how that goes for you." Then, 20 minutes later, "I didn't mean that. I'm just scared. Please just call me." I didn't call her. I documented everything and went back to work. Over the next 3 days, she cycled through the same rotation, pleading, threatening, apologizing, threatening again. Every girl cheats, but only she was the one being abandoned. Every conversation she'd wanted to have for 2 years, now delivered at 3 a.m. in fragments she'd probably regret in daylight. I read every message. I responded to none of them. Then she showed up at my office. I was at my day really one in the lobby asking for me. I knew before I stood up, Marissa was standing near the front entrance when I came out of the elevator. She dressed carefully put together, composed, the version of herself she showed the world. But her eyes were red, and her voice, when she spoke, was pitched just loud enough for the 2 people at the reception desk to hear every word. "You won't answer me at home," she said. "You won't pick up the phone. I don't know what else to do, Reed. I don't know what I did that was so terrible that you can't even look at me." The receptionist glanced up, then looked back down. I looked at Marissa standing there in the middle of that lobby, tears ready, voice trembling right on cue, and something settled in me with complete finality. She'd done this before. Not here. Not in this building. But she had done this exact thing, manufactured a public moment, positioned herself as the wounded party, and waited for me to either capitulate or look like the villain. She was very good at it. I realized, standing there, that I had always been the only audience she needed. Not anymore. I turned to Petra and asked her, calmly, to get our building's security coordinator. Then I went back to the elevator and pressed the button for my floor. That was the last time Marissa ever had the advantage of surprise. I'd spoken to a lawyer 3 weeks earlier. Not because I was certain about what I was going to do, but because I wanted to know exactly what I was allowed to do. She walked me through everything: the recording laws in our state, the documentation requirements, the separation process. By the time I left her office, I had a folder, a plan, and a temporary legal separation agreement that needed one more signature, mine. I signed it the night before Marissa showed up in my lobby. So when the elevator doors opened on my floor the next morning and I sat back down at my desk, I wasn't improvising. I pulled up my email, confirmed one thing with my lawyer, and then I waited. 15 minutes later, my phone buzzed. Building security had escorted Marissa out of the lobby. She hadn't made a scene on the way out. That surprised me, actually. But then again, there was no audience left to perform for. I gave it another 10 minutes. Then I opened the family group chat. This was the chat that had Marissa's parents, her brother, her aunt, my parents, and my 2 sisters, 17 people who had spent the last several weeks hearing Marissa's version of events. I knew this because my mother had called me twice asking if everything was okay, her voice careful in the way it gets when she already knows the answer and doesn't want to upset you. I told her I'd explain soon. She'd said okay. She trusted me. I typed one message. I want everyone to have the same information I have. Folder is shared. Then, I pasted the link. The Google Drive folder had 4 subfolders. The first contained all 15 video clips, labeled by timestamp. The second contained the 37-minute audio recording with a written transcript I'd put together over 2 evenings, timestamps highlighted in yellow, wherever Marissa mentioned Logan by name or referenced the marriage directly. The third subfolder had the Instagram story archive, all 12 posts, dates visible, the wedding ring visible in 7 of them. The fourth had screenshots of 214 text messages, sorted chronologically from the first one at 2:11 a.m. to the last one sent 40 minutes before she walked into my lobby that morning. No caption. No explanation. No "here's what happened" or "let me tell you my side." Just the folder. Just the contents. Just the facts arranged in order. I turned my phone face down on the desk. Then, I put my headphones in and finished the rest of my shift. I didn't check the chat for 4 hours. When I finally did, there were 61 messages. I scrolled to the top and read them in order. Marissa had sent 3 messages of her own into the chat, the first within 2 minutes of my link going up, the second 7 minutes after that, the third a single line that just said "please don't do this." After her third message, nobody responded to her directly. They were all talking to each other. Radio silence, it turned out, was contagious. The first 6 hours after I sent that link were the quietest 6 hours I'd had in months. I know that sounds strange. 61 messages in the family chat, Marissa's phone probably ringing off the hook, and I'm describing it as quiet. But quiet is exactly what it was for me. I'd put my headphones in. I'd finished my shift. I'd driven home, made a sandwich, and sat at the kitchen table in an apartment that felt, for the first time in a long time, like it was just a place where I lived rather than a place where I was always bracing for something. Marissa's mother called at 7:14 that evening. I almost didn't pick up. When I did, she didn't say hello. She just said, "Reed, I am so sorry." Her voice was flat in the way voices get when someone has been crying for a while and has run out of new things to feel. She didn't ask me to reconsider. She didn't defend her daughter. She just said she was sorry and that she hadn't known, and that she understood if I needed to not hear from her family for a while. I told her I appreciated that. We stayed on the phone for maybe 90 seconds. Then, we both hung up. Marissa's brother left the group chat sometime that night. No message, no explanation, just a notification that he'd removed himself. One of Marissa's closest friends, a woman named Danny who had been in the chat where the original voice note had landed 2 months earlier, sent me a private message that said 3 words. I didn't know. Then, after a pause, a second message. "I'm sorry, Reed." Danny had been one of the first people to like the Single Life Hits Different post. Marissa herself sent 42 messages to my personal phone between 8 p.m. and midnight. I know the number because I counted them before I turned read receipts off. They followed the same arc as the 3 a.m. texts: desperate, then angry, then pleading again. Somewhere in the middle of that arc was a photo, 4 pages of notebook paper, handwritten, photographed in slightly uneven lighting. I could see her handwriting, but I didn't zoom in. I set the phone down and didn't pick it up again that night. I knew what was in it. The same thing that was always in it. A new version of the same old story. The next morning I slept until 8. I made coffee. I sat by the window and watched the street for a while. Nobody needed anything from me. Nobody was waiting for me to react or explain or apologize. It was a Tuesday. It was ordinary in exactly the way I hadn't realized I'd been missing. I thought about the last 2 years. I thought about all the times I'd talked myself out of what I was seeing clearly. I thought about the version of Marissa I'd married, the one who made rooms feel like they had more oxygen, and I let myself miss her for exactly as long as it took to finish my coffee. Then I rinsed the cup, put it in the drying rack, and started making a list of things I needed to do that week. I'm not going to call this a victory. I want to be clear about that. There's nothing to celebrate when a marriage ends. There's no version of this story where I walk away feeling like I won something. What I walked away with was a lot of paperwork, a quieter apartment, and the specific exhaustion of someone who has been carrying a weight for so long that when it's finally gone, they don't feel light, they just feel the absence of heavy. The divorce is in process. My lawyer tells me the documentation I put together has been useful in ways I won't go into detail about here, but the short version is that the misconduct clause in our separation agreement is not being contested. Marissa hired her own lawyer. That lawyer has not been aggressive. I take that as its own kind of answer. Logan, from what I heard through a mutual contact, went quiet the moment he found out about the recordings. Nobody has seen much of him in the group since. I don't think about him often. He was a symptom, not the disease. Marissa sent me one final message 3 weeks after the group chat. Not a long one, this time just 2 sentences. She said she hoped I understood someday that she never meant for things to end this way. I read it once. Then, I archived it in the same folder as everything else, labeled it with the date, and closed the app. I still think about the version of her I married sometimes. The one who made rooms feel like they had more oxygen. I think that person was real, at least in the beginning. I think somewhere along the way she decided that keeping me uncertain was easier than being honest, and that calling me obsessed was easier than examining what she was doing. I don't know when that shift happened exactly. I'm not sure it matters anymore. What I know is this. For 2 years, every time I asked for something basic, a text when she'd be late, a straight answer, a little bit of consistency, I was handed a label. Obsessed. Controlling. Too much. And I believed it. Not all the way, not every day, but enough. Enough to stay quiet when I shouldn't have. Enough to apologize for things that weren't mine to apologize for. Radio silence isn't cruelty. Sometimes it's the only honest answer left, the answer you give when every word you've said before has been turned against you, when the only language they can't reframe is the one where you simply stop handing them ammunition. I'm not telling you this so you'll feel sorry for me. I'm telling you this because if someone in your life keeps calling you obsessed every time you ask to be treated with basic respect, the question isn't whether you're obsessed. The question is what they're working so hard to keep you from seeing clearly. I saw it clearly. Just a little later than I should have.